from the New York Times. Columbia bars student protester who said Zionists don't deserve to live. After a video surfaced on social media, the student, Kimani James, said on Friday his comments were wrong. Is it just that he got banned from school? They were like, okay, you are officially banned. You can never be here again. And he's like, oh, I didn't mean that. Like, these woke leftists, maybe this is the psyop, right? Maybe the psyop is let them say all of these horrible things until they cross the line and then get permanently banned. And now they're suffering consequences and backtracking. Or is it just that this is the line of where they say you can say all those other awful things, you can push all those other awful communist ideologies, but don't you dare say bad things about Zionism.
I mean, I think that really is the case. Like they targeted a group they're not allowed to target. They've been getting away for this for a very long time. I think it's pretty obvious. It's hard to look at the evidence and see anything else.
I just Google searched this person's name, and his college admissions essay was published by Medium, and it's all about systemic racism and how he's affected by it, which I find it so tiresome that the left is shocked by the fact that they allowed their academic institutions to become intensely progressive and to back these ideas, which they confirm by accepting students who were like, this is my stance, and by not supporting equity. And then they're like, wow, so crazy that these are happening. The students are angry.
I don't believe any of the teachers don't know it.
I don't even want to read this quote from this guy. He said, he compared Zionists to white supremacists and Nazis. These are all the same people. The existence of them and the projects they have built, i.e. Israel's antithetical to peace. It's all antithetical to peace. And so, yes, I feel very comfortable. And then he goes on to say he wants them dead. This is what these universities are fomenting. I'll put it this way. I'm fairly pissed off. Mike Johnson comes down to these universities and then says, we're going to pull your funding and call them the National Guard. And I'm like, oh, you finally do it. But I'm also willing to be like, screw it, pull their funding. If this is the issue that finally gets their funding pulled, fine. I'll take it.
Okay, this college essay, he's writing about our education system is rooted in systemic racism, and it's always been a direct cause for poor funding and political neglect of the Black and brown communities. To combat this, we must identify the individual issues that exacerbate the inequalities and work to tear them down one by one. Like, this person has been on...
That's just straight deconstruction,
this is
too.
Crazy, dude. He said, be grateful that I'm not going to read the quote, that he's not going out committing murders.
Right.
This is what these universities have built, accepted.
Listen, they push extremism.
Pull their funding.
This is all anti-colonialism. This is all like decolonization stuff. It's Franz Fanon in the Wretched of the Earth or whatever he wrote. Is like decolonization is always violent. It's fundamentally violent. So and to say any of the leftist professors aren't familiar with these ideas is a flat out lie. Because I'm sure everybody in the humanities has read Franz Fanon. They know what decolonization is. They know how the people that have come up with these theories, they know how they think. They know what's in the text. And it's not something that I'm reading into the text. It's articulated in the text. It is always violent.
Let's get into the classical liberal conundrum that we face. Because we were talking about this with, it may have been with Adam Johnson, lectern guy. About the limits of liberalism. We all say we want free speech, and that means supporting the speech of people you don't like. And I'm like, man, if we've got these protests and they're literally calling for murder, literally, there's a challenge. The left claims that people on the right are. They're not. Like, I go to a Trump rally, and nobody is. They'll lie and say they are because they want to weaponize that to start banning people. At what point does classical liberalism reach its limit, or liberalism in general, when you have these protests? And the problem is the people seeking to gain power are quite literally saying they want to go murder a bunch of people. This, again, I will stress this. The left made this argument about Trump supporters because Trump supporters wanted a secure border. That was clearly a manipulation and a lie.
Yeah.
Now you have a guy who's one of the active organizers shaking hands with Ilhan Omar, he looks like one of the guys from the videos who was trying to remove people from the camp. And he say, be grateful he's not going out and just committing these acts. At what point do we actually say, okay, this protest is actually crossing the line and needs to be shut down? Because where's the line? How do we call that?
James Burnham said that liberalism is the ideology of Western suicide because it eliminates the ability of a culture to defend itself, to prefer itself to others, and to say that there are lines that simply cannot be crossed with, there's no way in which you can allow people to say certain things that will absolutely destroy your culture. And I think the fact that this line is being drawn here is a problem. It should have been drawn much earlier. Again, these same activists have been talking about colonization and the destruction of the West and the importance of banning white people of European descent from their campuses for a very long time. This line should have been crossed a very long time ago. So I'm not a fan of the line suddenly appearing. But to be fair, as long as you're going to put tanks in Harbor Yard, that's fine.
But what you're saying, we should shut these protests down.
I'm saying that that obviously any violence in these protests was always unacceptable. So what he's saying here should be unacceptable. But the problem is the left doesn't have any way to understand like when that actually gets tripped over, because their entire ideology is that violent revolution is part of the solution, right?
So here's what I don't like. I don't like that we have had this same ideology. There have been, since Occupy Wall Street, people at these universities, They liberals get the bullet too was written on a wall. And it's like, this is not the first time they've done this. It is annoying to me that, now it's Israel and all of a sudden taking action. I'm also not going to be so blind as to the end results and goals to say, we think these universities fomenting communism is bad. If Mike Johnson is now saying this is the reason that we pull their funding, I'm like, well, we've wanted their funding pulled for a long time. So I will accept that this is your reason finally reaching that point because it's good. But my thought and where I'm hitting this wall is like, Greg Abbott said it's anti-Semitic, and we all mock him for it, being like, dude, you can't shut people down for hate speech. But then you see the degree to which these people are actively trying to or encouraging violence. And then I'm kind of just like, do we eventually get forced into that point where that the left has actually bragged about, the Karl Popper meme? That they have become so violent and intolerant, they firebombed buildings, they took over street corners, that eventually we just say, okay, liberalism is for the liberal and you aren't liberal, so now we're gonna bring in the National Guard and the police to secure the campus.
So I am sympathetic to the idea that liberalism is an internally working system, right? Like it only works for liberals. So if you're an illiberal person and you are saying, look, we are going to use the state to clamp down on you for whatever it is, like if that's their goal, or if they're going to be subversive, right? Liberals, one of the features of liberalism is you take the person that you're interacting with, you take them at their word. The point is, I'm going to assume that you're telling the truth, right? So the liberal starts at a deficit, starts in a vulnerable position because you're assuming good intentions of the person that you're dealing with. If you're not a liberal, right? If you don't have that worldview, if you're a postmodernist or you have any type of authoritarian opinion or a philosophy or whatever, then dealing with liberals, all you have to do is just lie to them, and it's as simple as that.
Here's the issue I take. The left made these arguments about white supremacy and all that stuff, and they were like, if you're if you believe in scheduling and meritocracy, you're a white supremacist, and these people, that's insane. Right? They say you're racist if you don't believe in our communist ideas and stuff like this. The issue I take is that same ideology falls onto the word Zionism. And we've talked about this. I've been called a Zionist simply for saying that Israel is a country. There are many people who believe it's not. They believe it's a colonial move and that it's actually Palestine with a fake name slapped on it. And wasn't it like China or something that removed Israel? What country removed Israel from the map or something like that? That was a while ago. And so now, when this guy says that he doesn't think Zionists should live, and he's a leftist, and we know leftists play word games, and we know leftists think that the word racist means anyone who disagrees with me, my concern is, are these people getting to the point where what they're really saying is, whether you support Israel or not, whether you think they should be funded, because I'm of the America First opinion, like I don't know why we're funding all this stuff. I don't see good reason to do it. We should be securing our border and fixing jobs and all that. But simply by acknowledging its existence, people call me a Zionist. Do I fall into his camp? I would say 100% yes.
Everybody that it was the same thing when they were talking about Ben Shapiro's a Nazi and punch a Nazi is acceptable. It is accuracy is not the point when it comes to the left's use of language. They're not using language to articulate accurately the reality that we all exist in, because they don't believe that we all share a reality. They believe that everybody's reality is subjective. So words, because they don't represent actual reality, words are used to impart emotion and to get effect. And so if they can say, "Oh, you're a Nazi," then that justifies violence.
Right. You can see that in the statement that the student put out. He says, far-right agitators went through my months of social media history.
Yeah, far-right agitators, which is anyone to my right.
Right. Mentions I'm visibly queer and black, and that's why they're targeting me. And then goes on to say, I misspoke, and I'm sad that this is distracting from what's going on in Gaza. I mean, there are clear buzzwords are meant to be well, now you have to realign to my position so I can distance myself from that and talk to you about why I am the victim in this scenario.
Mass communication and persuasion are never about accuracy. They're always about emotion. They're always about creating a friend and enemy distinction, and thinking that being the best arguer, the best debater is what actually wins you public opinion is a failure to understand the dynamic entirely.
No, the Ben Shapiro dunking things of 10 years ago, the reason why they were good is because people laughed. It was the emotional reaction that people liked about them. It wasn't that the arguments were well, maybe the arguments were good, but that wasn't the point of them. The point was to get the emotional, to get the chuckle at
real quick, someone super chatted saying this is the guy who yelled "I'm bored" and pushed the people out of the campus. The reason allegedly was that one of the guys was a guy wearing a Star of David, and so he saw it and said, "You're a Zionist," and started yelling at him, and then called for help to get rid of the Zionists. I don't know if there's anything else beyond that, but I really do feel like those of us, we had this we already mentioned this, but liberalism is for liberals.
Yeah.
And my attitude on free speech shifted quite a bit. Because I used to be, I think it's rather naive too. I believe in free speech, even if someone is saying bad things. And then what did we learn? When it came to issues of leftists being censored, everyone on the right and all the free speech people would be like, "No, you can't do that. Come on, we're for free speech." And they would go, "Thank you guys so much." And then they would start flagging you and trying to get you banned.
Yep.
And then I'd be like, wait, I just helped you. And you immediately turned on me. And for me, there was a formative moment where I met an activist that I had known for a long time, Occupy Wall Street. And he was a free speech guy, an internet guy. And then I was talking to him, and he's a hardcore leftist right now, commie. And he was like, "I love the censorship. I'm glad it's happening. This is a great move in the right direction." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "You're the guy who's leading the charge on free speech." And he laughed, and he's like, "Yeah, for me." And then I was like, "So those of us who actually believed in the idea of people being free speech, you never agree with us." And he chuckled, and he was just like, "You guys are useful idiots. We were demanding the right to say the things we wanted to say, and you marched alongside us. And now that we have that power, we will shut you up."
Yeah. And
I was just like, wow. He said it to my face. A guy I've known for a long time. He was like, "Don't you understand what we're trying to do?" And so now my idea then became, okay, if you don't agree with free speech, I don't give it to you. If someone comes to me and says, "I believe in free speech for everybody," even if I don't agree with them, I'll say, "Okay, then when you get censored, I will stand with you if you stand with me." The leftists say, "We don't believe in free speech." And I say, "Okay, then I won't defend you. You get what you ask for." Now we have these people who want violence and don't want people on the right to be able to protest. They want the universities to fund their psychotic ideologies. And I'm like, should we bestow upon them the rules they have asked for, which would be if a bunch of Trump supporters show up on campus to protest, they would demand these people are cracked over the head with a truncheon. Should we then be like, okay, well, then Greg Abbott should arrest and remove the protesters trying to take over campus, and these people at Columbia should be removed because it's what they literally ask for in governance.
This is why the meme "communists always lie" is a meme. Because they use words not to represent reality, but to move an argument. And that means they just have to convince people. Like when people made jokes about Jordan Peterson talking about postmodern Marxists and stuff, how they don't work together and blah, 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 blah. But the postmodernist part is they're going to select arguments not based on their representation of reality, but based on their effectiveness. And if they can make an argument that persuades people, it doesn't matter if it's true or if anyone believes it's true. It persuades people. They'll throw that argument away and make the opposing argument later. And you see this over and over and over when you end up listening to a lot of these leftists talk. This is par for the course for the philosophy that they have. And I mean, I kind of make the argument all the time that what we're dealing with is people that are struggling with philosophy because the old philosophies that we kind of had have come under significant stress, and they're being tested, or if they're fit for the 21st century.
The question is, should we, the communists who want the power of government, who cheer, the Black Lives Matter protesters say defund the police, but then the police show up to a guy's house in Milwaukee and arrest him, and they cheer and celebrate for it. They clearly don't actually, they don't want to defund the police. They want the police to do what they want them to do.
Yeah.
So then is the only thing we can do is to actually be like, don't allow leftists to protest.
Well, I mean, you can allow them to protest, just don't allow them. I suppose you just have to say, look, we can't allow anyone to violate the law. I mean, we have to.
But the point I'm making is, if this guy and his friends come out and say Trump supporters shouldn't be allowed to hold rallies, the police should stop it because they're violent white supremacists. I say, oh, you think violent supremacists should not be allowed to hold rallies? Okay, cops, kick them out. That's the government. They literally asked for it. They said, this is how we want to be. Golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you say the right can't rally or protest, and this is where I'm at. Look, Antifa shows up to Gavin McInnes's speech. They attack, they threaten people, they throw things at people. It's the Proud Boys who go to jail for it. Trump supporters it wasn't even Trump supporters, it was anti-censorship activists in DC held a rally. Antifa shows up and starts fighting them. A handful of guys show up in front of a hospital protesting mask mandates. Antifa shows up and starts beating the crap out of them. And
in
I'm
the
like,
UK, you can't even pray silently outside of.
Right. So that my attitude becomes, why would they be mad if they get the government they asked for?
Look, liberalism cannot solve this problem. And the reason it can't solve it is very simple. It's designed only to resolve problems with people who share very similar worldviews. It cannot resolve problems with people who have radically different worldviews. You cannot reach a consensus through logic or discussion unless you share a similar version of reality, a similar version of what the world should look like. When it's radically separated, it does not work.
So real
quick, the fear is, if we say, fine, Greg Abbott, send in the troops, we agree, don't let them protest, then we effectively sign off on the government doing it to us when we do protest. And that's the fear that liberals have.
The government's going to do it to us either way is the point.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.